Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are going to be doing something a little familiar, but not too familiar. And I just want to say this is like my fifth, maybe sixth time recording this voiceover, and the last time I recorded this, I paused for like a solid 5 seconds when I said that because I was like, where have I heard that before? And I went through the entirety of the Mabim Bam theme in my head before I was like, oh, it's Mabim Bam! So if you guys haven't seen my brother and me, that podcast that the McElroy brothers do, please watch it. It's really good. And clearly, even though I haven't heard it in months, it gets stuck in your head and you think about it on a regular basis. So, not spawns, but please go watch that. It's really, really good. Anyways, so we're doing something sort of similar to things that we've done before, and that is the 3-marker challenge, but instead I'm going to be doing it with acrylics, with acrylics. And the reason that I want to do it with acrylics is because I know I've been saying this for literally a year. Last year I asked for oil paintings for Christmas, and then on my birthday you guys saw that I went and got a bunch of painting stuff and canvases and all of these other things, and I told myself I was gonna paint, and then I did do a sketch that was intended to be a painting. You guys have seen it on Instagram over and over again, that girl with the goat, and how it has like the Procreate sketch, and then it has like the color palette sketches, and me getting it actually onto the canvas from Procreate. It's still on the canvas. I don't have an underpainting. I don't have anything. I have not started beyond getting it on the canvas, and I still don't know when I'm going to finally get myself to start it, but I did at least want to force myself to get into painting, and I knew the only way to force myself after an entire year of me wanting to paint, the only way I was going to get the initiative to actually get up and paint something was if I scared myself with a deadline and did it for a video. So that's where we are today. So the first thing I did was I closed my eyes and I stuck my hand in my unorganized paint drawer, so there was no way that I was going to pick up obviously there was a possibility of me picking up what is it called? It's not complementary. Maybe it's analogous. It's been a while, but there was no way I was gonna pick up like a yellow, red, or orange and like all three together unless I was like very, very lucky. But again, like I said, it's unorganized, so I just stuck my hand in there and grabbed 3, and I promise you, despite there not being a clip of me doing it, I did this blindly, because were I cheating, I would have picked a much better palette that I would have had a much easier time with. But instead, I ended up with a rose gold, a red, and a bright greenish blue. So, after a minor freakout upon receiving those 3 colors, I decided the next thing that I should do is to try and mix all 3 of those colors together to see what sort of tones I could get out of those 3. So obviously I have the original base colors, and then I ended up with a nice like sort of berry-ish purple, a very, very beautiful metallic red. If I had to compare it with anything, Cherry Bomb by Cherry Bomb by Gerard Cosmetics, that metallic liquid lip where it's like super red but it's got like pink glitters all up in there. That's what that reminded me of, and I was obsessed with it. I still have that lipstick. It's like years old, but you can't make me quit using it because it's the prettiest red ever. And then the last 2 colors that I got were kind of shocking. They were very gray colors despite the very obviously pigmented and colorful colors that I got. So the first one I got was a grayish green that I got by mixing the rose gold and that bluish green color. And then the final color that I got was the grayish purplish color that I got, and I got that by mixing all 3 of the colors together. And so I think the reason that they were gray, it might have had something to do with how the blue color reacted with like the metallic pigment, because the only time I got really a gray color was if the blue was involved. but I only got that gray with the blue and the rose gold, if that makes sense. So I think something in the blue reacting with like maybe like a silver mica in the rose gold must have been attributing to that gray color. It also, like, both of those colors lost their metallic sheen. So you guys saw with the red, obviously I just talked about how obsessed I was with it because it was like red with like super pretty pink sparkles in it, and it was still very, very metallic. But both of the blue colors just lost their metallicness and turned gray, so that was really interesting, I guess, for me to see. So, 4 minutes into the video, finally getting into talking about the actual illustration. So the first thing that I did was I sketched and lined the character, and I will get into why I did line art for the character in just a second, but I first wanted to talk about the overall sketch for the illustration. So I knew I wanted to stick to like a normal basic portrait and not really push the pose or expression too much. I know I've talked about in the last 2 videos how I've been going to Pinterest and sort of like trying to pick poses and fashion and expressions and make my characters more unique and expressive, but I did not want to do that with this illustration because I knew that my main struggle was going to be with the materials and with the colors that I got, obviously. So I didn't want to like force myself to worry about proportions and all of these other things, in addition to trying to figure out how to make the paint work and things like that. I didn't want to bring myself more trouble than I was already going to have. So the next thing that I did was, obviously, like I said, I did line art on the character, and the reason that I did line art, despite the fact that I was going to be painting on top of the illustration, was because of that very same reason. I was going to be painting on top of it, and that is something that scares me. So you guys can see from mostly my digital work, a little bit in my traditional work. Obviously with my Copic markers, I will do very like hard pencil sketches as an alternative to line art, so that the colors from the color pencils show through, but it's still like a little bit softer than if I were to use straight line art. And then in my digital illustrations as well, I will just go with like the first sketch or maybe a second sketch if the first one is not tight enough for me. But aside from if I'm doing actual like line art commissions, which, by the way, quick plug, I'm still taking commissions at a discount until the end of November. So if you want to get your hands on a commission, be sure to check me out on Instagram. I'm taking as many as I possibly can, and they will be open until the end of November. So be sure you go and do that. But again, aside from actual line art commissions, I usually just stick with a sketch, and then I will put my painting underneath that and then set the sketch to multiply and then blend all of that together rather than doing actual line art. But that is not something that you can really do with paintings. There is no such thing as there's layers, but not the type of layers us digital artists are used to, okay? If I want to like add a like sheer layer on top, I can't do that. I can water a white down as much as I would like, but it won't add like a milky like semi-opaque layer on top. It won't work. I can't, there's no such thing as multiply in traditional art. There's only, you can build your values or you can lighten them, and that is all you can do, okay? You can't just bring your line art magically from underneath to the top of your painting and then set it to multiply so that it is still visible. But the only thing that I can think of that would be sort of similar would be doing very dark line art, and I will explain why I thought of that. Basically, I know acrylic is somewhat sheer, especially the cheap little apple barrel paints that I'm using. They are somewhat see-through because, again, they're cheap. They're like 50 cents a piece. They're not like the most opaque, and also they're acrylics, so they're naturally just a little bit thinner than they would be like for oil paints or something. So I knew that were I to put just a sketch down, that probably would have been covered up, but if I were to put black line art, I might be able to somewhat see that through the painting, and I was correct, thank goodness. but also not, thank goodness, because I did have a little bit of an issue where as soon as I started putting the paint down on top, I don't know if this was due to the type of pen that I was using. I was using one of those Papermate like felt tip pens. I don't know if it was that or if it was the fact that I went in with my paint almost as soon as I finished the line art. I don't know why I didn't think to let it dry. Probably because I was so worried about the paint, but it did end up smudging a little bit. Luckily, it didn't end up being too much of a problem because you guys will see, or probably have already seen, I went in with the rose gold for the skin, and that ended up being relatively dark enough so you didn't notice the smudging too much. And if you did, it was something that I could easily build on top of and end up hiding in the future, but I was still able to see enough of the line art through the actual illustration so that I did not have to be scared about where to place everything like I would have if everything were covered up. So the next thing I want to do is talk just a little bit about like the actual drawing itself. So you guys may have noticed the weird pattern, I guess you could say, on her neck, and that is a ball joint, because when I first saw my palette, you guys know already, I was so terrified and I was like, oh wow, these are very unnatural colors and I do mostly portraits. What the heck am I gonna do? And I thought because the rose gold was a very earthy color that would be a good color to use for the skin, and because I was able to get that darkish red metallic-y color, that was the darkest color that I had in all of them. And because that was also metallic, I didn't feel weird using the rose gold for the skin because the shading would also be metallic. But because it was metallic, despite it being a somewhat naturally looking tone in the right lighting, like I'm sitting on my desk and it is sitting on my bed, the like painting is sitting on my bed, it just looks like I used brown. But if I were to get her in the right lighting, it would be super shiny. So I decided I didn't want to go with like a totally just like normal chill human. I thought, I don't know what exactly made me think of this, but the metallic for some reason reminded me of a ball jointed doll. So that's why I added the joint on the neck, because her arms weren't visible, and I thought despite there not really being any dolls that have a joint just on the bottom of the neck, I was like, there's gotta be some way that I can just put a joint in there somewhere. So that's what I did, because I knew that the top of the neck had like a neck peg and that just wouldn't make sense to put it there. So I put it at the base of her neck, right above her shoulders, and then to sort of drive the doll aspect home, I do put like very large eyes on characters, but I decided to make them way bigger than I normally would so that it would sort of like emphasize like, hey, these are giant doll eyeballs. And so I gave her huge eyeliner, eyelashes, stuff like that sometimes I do, but I usually tone it down a little bit. I decided to tone it up for this illustration. And then I also gave her like a more sculpted top lip. Normally you guys will see me do, I just do two like curves, but I gave her like a very distinct cupid's bow and just bright red shiny lips, because that is what I wanted to do and what I thought would sort of illustrate, like I was kind of going for like a Monster High doll aesthetic, just because I know in the repaint community, which if you are an artist yourself and have not had the pleasure of viewing any of the doll painting community's videos, I would recommend Delightful. She's amazing. Hexgian is really good. I'm gonna say her name wrong. Poppin' Atelier is really, really good. Check out these artists. They make incredible dolls. Like, I've wanted to like do my own repaint for so long, but I can't get a hold of any of the materials because they're so expensive, but they're so beautiful. So definitely check some of those out. But that was basically my inspiration for this illustration. So I want to say the thing that I was very pleasantly surprised with, like I mentioned before, is that the metallic skin tone actually ended up being very like natural. So I was really pleased with that. However, there were some things that I was not very pleased about in this challenge. So the first struggle that I had was I was really scared to blindly pick my colors, and I was rightfully so, because I ended up with, in my opinion, mostly midtones. So while I was able to get some lighter colors in the case of the blue so that I would at least have a shift of value in the illustration itself, I didn't really end up with colors that were light enough, like especially in the case of the skin, because I didn't automatically have the chance to work with a white. I couldn't lighten up any of the colors so that they would be a more of a natural value shift, I guess. So for the skin, luckily, like I said, I had that dark red that I could rely on and sort of use to push the value, but I did not have a highlight that I could use on her skin, and that was really incredibly annoying because I'm very particular about how I blend my skin. So again, I was really heavily relying on that dark red color, and while I did have a lighter color in the light gray, it just was not the right color, I guess you could say. And again, it wasn't metallic because even though it was mixed with the rose gold, for some reason it was mattified when it was added with the blue. And so yeah, it wasn't the right tone, it wasn't the right, what's the word for that? Not formula, but like, it wasn't shiny, so it would look weird to have all of the shine on the skin and then just have one of the colors be not shiny, and then it just wasn't the right color, so they wouldn't have mixed together good. Like, I sound like I'm whining, but I knew it wasn't gonna look good if I used it on the skin. It was gonna look weird, it wasn't the right hue, and it wasn't the right type of highlight, I guess you could say. So I really struggled with trying to get a good value scale, I guess you could say. And the reason that I say that I don't like that I got all midtones, because like clearly, like doing the 3 marker challenge, you can also get 3 midtones, but the problem with this is, unlike acrylics, you can layer Copics or Ohuhu or any other type of alcohol marker over and over and over again until you end up with a very, very dark color. But when you have only 3 colors of acrylics, there's only so dark that you can get. In fact, most people will say, like, just mix all your colors together. Mixing all of my colors together got me one of the lightest colors in the entire illustration. So that obviously wasn't gonna work, and you can only get so dark and you can only get so light when you have acrylics. But if you have Copics, you can layer and layer and layer until you get a dark color, until you get your midtone, and until you get your lightest but still technical midtone. That is not something I could have done for this illustration, although I wish I could have. I wish I had a more cohesive palette or just a lighter color in general. But I guess the main point of this challenge was to help me learn better. So I guess, did I do that? In my opinion, obviously, I still have a lot to learn about painting, but I honestly think I did learn a lot to this illustration. So despite me being upset about having mostly midtones, it did teach me how to sort of place colors in the illustration so that it would lead your eye a bit. And I honestly kind of like some of the colors that I was able to get. Despite me not liking them all together, I did end up finding like some really new color mixes that I wouldn't have probably mixed on my own had I not done this challenge, like that purple. I never in my life think that those two would come up with like the perfect pinky berry purple, but they did, and I like it, and I'm keeping these colors in mind so that I can use them in the future. And I guess like, even though one of my colors was like literally metallic and I didn't have a white, I was still able to make something that I can look at and be like, you know, I don't hate it. It could have been a hot mess, and it kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. Like, I don't look at it and then immediately want to stop looking at it like I do with even some of my digital paintings. So I think in general it was a success, and I learned a lot, and I hope to learn a lot more. And now that I'm not as scared of acrylics, I think it will teach me to use them a lot more in the future, and I promise I will update you guys if I do end up doing more paintings. But basically, I just want to say thank you guys for watching this video. I would definitely recommend that you try to force yourself to do this challenge as well. It was really challenging, but it was also really fun. And then, like I said before, I'm still taking commissions until November 30th. You guys still have a few days to get your orders in, so do not forget, just send me a DM on Instagram, and I will make sure that everybody that orders a commission gets it before the holidays. So, again, keep that in mind. If you need it by a certain date, like if you celebrate Hanukkah and not Christmas, and it's earlier or later, I don't know which this year, I'll have to look at my calendar, but if you need it by a certain date, let me know and I'll make sure to prioritize you. But I'm still trying to take as many as I can, so please check that out. And if you do, thank you so much. And speaking of thanking you guys, I want to give a huge shout out to my patron Elise Thompson. Thank you so much for supporting me every single month. And if you guys want to become a patron and get your name at the end of these videos alongside some other cool prizes like discounted commissions and free wallpaper and tons of other stuff, you can check me out at patreon.com/SimonAESArts, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye. Show you guys, I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but look at how shiny she is. I love her. I can't believe I painted this, oh my god.